for inviting us to speak to your meeting. I just want to start with it's a topical thing for this type of meeting, which involves the Rights Work campaign, with some personal memories that I've had when I worked for 13 years in the private sector of construction. My first 13 years, from 15 years of age, I've not stopped working in the construction industry one way or the other. And some memories of that, and that lasted with me for a long time. I worked for 25 contractors, and the reason why I know that is because later on I developed plural facts, and I wanted to sue appropriate companies concerned, and you had to find out where you work, so they looked at all the different workplaces so you could identify where you got the asbestos from. And how you do that, the solicitor actually does a historical check on your national insurance number. So if you were a building worker fiddling on the lump, as we call it, then you know you're doubly going to get a penalty because you won't get to identify anything. But anyway, so I was a bit surprised I worked for that many contractors, but there they were all listed down, and I had to identify where I got the asbestos contamination from. Well, when I soon learned that that you had to keep your head down when you started a job, make sure you look like you were working your bollocks off, quite frankly, for the first few weeks, so the foreman wouldn't identify you and as someone that is not pushing their weight, and you wouldn't last. You'd also have to avoid any persons, particular from building foremen and governor's men, who might recognise you from another job that you was involved in, where you know, for your trade union activities. So that's the first lessons. And but there was no difference between myself and other workers as well, really, other than being a trade union politically motivated activist. And so I had to, and slowly but surely, attempt to build up my allies on sites and eventually declare my right to be a recognised trade union workplace, have a recognised trade union workplace, and hopefully get successful before they attempt to sack me. And if they did attempt to sack you, then you rely on your fellow workers, the down tools, and there was no ballots, you know, that's it, you got together, and there was a fight went on, an ideological fight, sometimes a physical fight as well, you know, to stop the job in defence of trying to organise your workplace. That's the reality before the anti-union laws, and also you had to fight with your union because they were telling you to go back to work, you're breaking the national agreement and so on. So historically there's always been enormous opposition to taking industrial action. So coming here today, walking down the side street, it is the RMT offices, and if anyone's seen the news recently, you know, the employers have backed down on the sacking, or one of them anyway, I think there's another one to come up, of the train drivers' representatives, because they were trade union representatives. And I think that's great that they can make that stand. There's not enough of that being done. Recently I can see another colleague here, I've been at a picket line at the Olympics, over what? Sacking, blacklisting of workers solely because they're trade union activists. So that happened years ago with me and many other thousands of workers, and there's no difference then than what it is today. Nothing has changed in that regard. Governments have come and gone, but that still happens. In fact, they've made it easier to do that. Actually, in the changes they made against blacklisting, in fact, wasn't changes to oppose blacklisting, but actually consolidated the changes within blacklisting. So it's about survival. And I was lucky, after 13 years working in the private sector, to get a job after walking the streets for some time, working for Southwark Building Direct Labour Organisation. And we was able to build up a very successful trade union workplace with loads of union representatives across the board, and very high standards of health and safety. In fact, pioneering some of the asbestos protection regulations was done on organised workplaces before they were ever brought into law. That's what we did. We had them in place before they even had most of it already in place. And the lesson is this, because we're talking about minimum regulations and so on. Don't go for minimum standards at the workplace. Go for the best. Never mind about the law of minimum standards. We want the best out of health and safety, and that's it. Because there's always quotes about, oh, the law says this, about regulation, this, that. Never mind about the regulations. Take action, say we ain't going to do it. We want, these are the standards we're having. We'll set the trend. And what I've found is that by that attitude, we was totally shocked about the figures that founded the CSC. In 1988, the amount of deaths, 167 deaths in 1 year, historical high. And we got together, it was mainly direct labour organisation workers, because you know, it's difficult to get organised and be a steward in the private sector of what was going on. This was just the days of the beginning of Thatcher and the backlash of her policies, and people were frightened, and we said, we've had enough of this. We're going to invade the health and safety executive press conference they have every year, and we're going to tell them the truth. Never mind about all this publicity. This is what goes on, and we see it, we know it. You're talking to the experts. Never mind about what the even HSE inspectors had to say, I've got to say, or anyone else. We're the professionals. Never mind about anything else. And that's what we did, and you know, it had a resonance amongst building workers, because historically health and safety is the cornerstone to any resistance. It always has been, going back over the years with enormous tragedies, whether it be in the mining industry, and you know, going back further than that, in the cotton mills, and not terrible things that were done to people. You know, talk about civilization. We never had any civilization with those standards, the Industrial Revolution and the rest of it. So it's the cornerstone of organising. I always find that, and we always get a welcome. And we've been able to, at the CSC, with involving with the Hazards Campaign and other organisations, have been able to change things as well in the last 20 years. We now see with the recession and the cuts a whole turning point now. We now face, you know, a turning back situation with the cuts, and that's why we featured in the London areas the cuts as the major issue on workers' moral day, because we could see it tipping the balance right the way around out of all the gains, and we have made gains. I've got them listed, by the way. I've got a book on sounding one, which right at the end of the meeting. I've got a few copies left, gold plated, so but we've listed it in our book, and we've made that. I mean, in the beginning, the trade unions didn't even recognise health and safety was an important matter. You never had resolutions going up to conferences or the TUC on important issues of health and safety. And when we started, we had a letter going round saying, have nothing to do with these people, everything is being done. And all they did is they had a joint circle with health and safety executive, actually, and you remember that? That's what they did, construction health and safety circle, and that was the extent of the, I'm not having a go at Simon, great.
Carry on, carry on.
It sounds like, but that's what happened, you know. We said, never mind that they tried to marginalise us by saying it's a splinter group and saying, we're not having any of that. And the lesson is, do not go to the top. If you want a campaign, start it from the bottom, drive it from the bottom, and let them, they will come to you anyway. Because what will happen, they get embarrassed and they think that they're going to be unseated in their positions and in the unions and so on. So they come to you, and you've got to treat them in the manner that they need to be, really, and that is their guests, really, and that's about it, no better than that. And that's, you know, so we have, and why I'm saying this is that there's a lot of, I went to a national delegate meeting on the pay claim in UCAT, you know, and it was doom and gloom as you're going around, other than one or two others. And I said, look, you know, never mind about the doom and gloom. In my authority, we've just defeated them on pay cuts. They tried to cut our pay. They tried to get rid of me 6 months ago. I'm still here. I'm a cat with 9 lives. I can't believe it. And so we are knocking them back when we're organised and we're having a go. And you know, people, why are we pessimistic? I mean, on the 26th we had, I don't know, I think there was at least 750,000. I don't know about 250,000 on the march. Just giving that little bit of lead. You know, what's the TUC going to do next? I don't know what they're going to do next. Well, that needs to be forthcoming a bit. And you know, there is the opportunity if the campaigns are vigorous from the beginning to actually begin to build a bottom-up movement, and that's what we did. It was bad in 1988. It was diabolical. It was it was Thatcher, the early days of Thatcher. Was it early days, middle days? I don't know. Of Thatcher and all that, what we was going through. And you know, I'm a product of the 1970s. 72 building workers strike. Was convener of Mile End Willett site of 400 workers there, and we had a flying picket, and we won. And we had no members in the industry. We had amalgamation of all the major craft unions because they were bankrupt. They had no money, they had no members. Why? Because the building workers had no faith in the unions to do anything, because they were doing nothing. So what happens is the progressives in the movement, progressives in the movement got together and said we're going to have to go into a strike, and we were welcomed on the sites because the pay was so low. We got the biggest historical rise on the back of that health and safety conditions that we had in the history of building trade workers in this country, and that was in a very depressive time. So the point I'm really saying here is that when you begin to get you progress something, you'll get people. There will be, particularly within leaderships as well of unions, certain unions, certainly in UK anyway, will try to dumb you down in a campaign. We've had that in the Shrewsbury campaign recently. Black and Peter Farrell's were very involved in that. Is at the back there. Maybe I'm not going to say a few words about that. And we'll try to disrupt. When you're successful, we'll try to disrupt and put you back. But we can make a difference. We have made a difference. And if we continue in the way that we've done, that we take it out to people at the workplace, these campaigns, we will make a difference.